Hi, Harold.
Hey, Abe, where are you?
How am I?
Yeah, where are you?
Or where am I? I'm in Hong
Yeah,
Kong.
Hong Kong. And how's your
Hong
family
Kong.
there? How's your
What?
Chinese how are your Chinese grandchildren?
Very good. Very good. Well, and great grandchildren. Forget about grandchildren.
Of course.
I've been traveling for a long time.
Yeah. You're right.
Hello,
I
everybody.
apologize.
Yeah. Who passed away today?
Neil,
Mila Kornwasser, you know, Speaker Reisman's mother-in-law.
Joe Corners.
it's really an old pioneer of Los Angeles. It's one of the last of the
Yeah.
Mohicans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we left off on page 302 in volume 18. I haven't gotten volume 19 yet. I'm just emailing them every day. Hopefully, I'll get it this week, and we're able to start volume 19 next week. They sent me a nice box of volume 22, which is Harold and Magda's, what they sponsored. But but I had requested 19, so
Yeah, 19, 20, and 21. That's funny.
well, yeah, I mean, we're behind, but I only request the volumes when we're about to study them. They have.
Right.
Here's Copster. Here's Copster's. This is Kobe's last night in Los Angeles. He's moving
Oh
to
my,
Israel tomorrow.
he's going to yeshiva? Chaim
No,
Berlin?
the
Where's he going?
family is making Aliyah tomorrow. There's a
Oh.
Nefesh B'Nefesh flight from LAX tomorrow.
One day we'll do the daf with Kobe.
Daf of
Kobe
Kobe.
will give the daf.
God
Okay?
willing. God willing. Okay. We
What
are on
page?
page 302. We were dealing with doing borer biyad and whether a utensil like a fork or a spoon is like an extension of your yad as opposed to being a kli, because they're stringent about doing borer with a kli. But remember, you're allowed to do borer with a yad. So we dealt with a number of opinions that said it was permitted to use a fork. Rav Avodia Yosef argues that contrary to the position of Mishnah Berurah, using cutlery for sorting never constitutes sorting using a utensil, as sorting is not a natural function of cutlery. The question whether it's permitted to do borer, to choose the good from the bad regarding food, if you're going to do it right away using a spoon or a fork, Nira Beinai, Rav Ovadia says it appears to me she'ein b'zeh mishum Mr. Borak Bekli, that it's not a borer. Shelo asur lekagon kanon v'tamchui shon dilabur, like a sieve, special kli that separates good from bad. Mashein came b'kafu mazlik shem derech achila. A fork and a spoon is what you eat with. The Kiyado Arichtadami says the Ovadia Yosef, it's like a long hand. It's like an extension of your hand. Remember, the Mishnah Berurah brought the case of milk that had a layer of fat on top of it, and he prohibited you from using a spoon on Shabbos to remove that fat. Even to eat it right away, but Ulamein Varv Muchrachim, he says, you can't prove from there that you can never use a spoon. Look at the footnote. He quotes the Eglei Tal, who writes explicitly that using a spoon to remove cream from milk is permitted. It should be pointed out that Eglei Tal provides an entirely different rationale for this ruling, namely that milk and cream are not considered to be a mixture, as they already form distinct layers, and the malacha of bor only applies to sorting items that are mixed. However, the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa rules in accordance with the Mishnah Berurah, and the resolution of Rav Moshe Feinstein quoted above. Accordingly, he writes in the name of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that if one puts rice in a salt shaker to absorb moisture, it is preferable not to pour salt from it on Shabbos through holes which prevent the rice from getting through, as this may be considered sorting using a utensil. I don't know what he's talking about. Must be something that they do in Israel. He also quotes Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach as suggesting a different reason for leniency, as the prohibition on using a utensil to sort may not apply to utensils which are designed only to sort for immediate use. You're eating. It's not, you're not using a fork to separate things that you're going to use, 2 months from now. However, as achronim such as the Chai Adam prohibit this, he does not reach a definitive conclusion. Shramati Magon Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zatzal. The kli am yuchad levlor, a kli whose specific usage is to sort, litzorach midi bilvad, for right away. Efshar deinu b'chola isur levor b'chli. If a utensil is designed to sort immediately, that's not a type of utensil that was prohibited. Lachen mutar lishpoch tamtzit tei derech mesanenet shebepiat tiyun. Pouring tea essence through the filter in the mouth of a teapot is permitted. Olotzi sakit tei min hakos, or remove a tea bag from a cup. Hagam shetipuach tamtzit saitem mitateftes min sakit. Even though there are drops of this essence dripping from the bag, just like it's permitted to sort using your hand, so it's the same thing here. I guess he permits using that salt shaker with rice in it. He says the Chai Adam of Danziger, he prohibited because of Desher Gam Chayiv. So he leaves it as a tzorachiyun, which means he's not sure. However, Rav Ovadia Yosef permits the use of a salt shaker categorically, as it's not designed for sorting at all, merely to moderate the flow of salt. Rav Ovadia does not state definitively whether or not he concurs with the more novel leniency regarding a utensil designed for sorting for immediate use. However, elsewhere in the Chavedas, Chazon Ovadia, he permits pouring through the filter in a teapot or removing a tea bag from a cup for other reasons. Back to the Chazon Ovadia, Kliya Nikra Malchia, a salt shaker. Sha'archu gagre oiriz v'melach shebetocha, they mix salt with rice. Kidei limnoa lachus v'melach, they don't want the salt to get moist. I guess putting rice kernels in there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Restaurants always,
Absorbs.
yeah, exactly. Also, you sometimes put your phone inside a rice bag to dry it out.
You ever drop it in water, just put it in a bag of rice.
Yeah.
okay. Hay mutar lishtamish ba b'Shabbos lefazer mimena melach al meichel idei machas u'menukav shemelachea. Can you use the salt shaker because technically you've got rice that you don't want and you have salt that you don't want. Is there a borer going on here? Near lani is daiti la'apir. He permits. It's not a kli made that way. It's for him the salt to come out. What about a slotted spoon? Do you want to bring an example of a slotted spoon?
He knows what a slotted spoon.
A spoon with those, holes in it. Is this considered a kli within the context of borer? The Orcha Shabbos rules that it is, and one may not use it for salad with a large amount of dressing. Ein lishtamish bekaf mechoreret l'netilas salat hamurav berotev. Don't use a slotted spoon if you have a lot of salad dressing on your salad. Heyot v'akafu kli hamishamish leber. The kaf is separating out what you want, what you don't want. It's allowing some of the dressing to drip off. By contrast, some Sephardic poskim, such as the Orlid Sion and Yalkut Yosef, rule that a slotted spoon may be used when removing solid food from a liquid soup or stew, though that they agree it's good to be strict. Shmir Shabbos also permits using a slotted spoon if one transfers the solid food quickly and it tends only to take the solid food and not specifically to separate the food from the liquid. You're in a soup, you want a piece of meat, or you want this, you don't have in mind that you want to get rid of the liquid. You just want a piece of spoon. And he says that's okay. She'ela to the Or L'Tzion. Ha'em mutar lotzi ochel misir hamarak. Can you take out food from a soup pot? B'miktzah sheyesh b'chorim. You're talking about a spoon with a slot. Shanois limistanin darkam. So the liquid drains through it. Or sheyesh b'zeh mishum iser borer. Or is there borer involved? Tshuva. Yesh latir lahotzi ochel ayadei matzeket zu. He permits. Avsha marak mistanein derech hachorim. Even though the liquid soup drains out of the spoon. Im dauto lechol ochel zemiyad. If his intent is to eat this food right away, because makom hamachmir is a tavalov bracha, but if you're machmir, you get a bracha. V'lachein alokech marach matzeket v'amayim yordim derech hachorim. If you take soup with this kind of spoon and the liquid comes out, havi kibor oichel mitoch hapsolet. It's like you're taking ochel from the psolet. Mutar lasos kenim ochel alter. Right? We've learned you can't remove the bad from the good, but you can take the good from the bad if you eat it right away. Remember, rabbinically, you're not allowed to use a kli. But that's a kli that's made like a sieve. And this perhaps is not a kli designed that way. There are those opinions that say there's no brayer when it comes to liquid. There's certainly no prohibition midaraisa. Even like using a sieve, it's only rabbinic. This certainly is not a kli that's made for boirer. It's permitted. If your kavan is not to get rid of the liquid, but just because you want the solid food, but still a machmer tover lov bracha. Okay. Ochel mitoch psolet and sorting two types of food. Often borer will involve sorting two types of food rather than sorting food from like waste product. The Baraisa quoted by the Gemara above in source 1 states explicitly that such sorting is prohibited under certain circumstances. Mm-hmm. And here's a quick recap from Masechta Shabbos 74a. Tan Rabbanan, Hayalafon of Mine Ochlin. Right? It doesn't say Oichel and Psoiles, it says just multiple foods. Boirer v'oichel borer meniach. You can choose your food and leave what you don't want. V'lo yivror. And you shouldn't sort. The imbirer chayv chatas. So the Gemara concluded that sorting different foods is permitted for immediate use, whereas sorting for later use is prohibited biblically. As we learned above, even sorting for immediate use is only permitted by hand and not through the use of certain utensils, right? Utensils that were made for borer. But we talked about a fork and a spoon that's not made for sorting, where we had lenient opinions. We also learned that removing waste from food is always prohibited. However, when sorting two different foods, the Rishonim dispute whether this third condition is relevant. Tosfot, quoting Rabbeinu Hananel, explains that the food that one does not want immediately is considered waste in this regard, and one must remove the food that one does not want now. Pirush Rabbeinu Hananel, even sorting food from one food, Shaykha Breira, Breira is relevant. He's choosing what he wants to eat versus what he doesn't want to eat. The food that he's choosing not to eat is in relationship to the food he's eating considered like waste. So that's how Tosfos learns. But the Rambam permits sorting two types of food for immediate consumption. It doesn't consider the other food that you don't want as waste because it's food, without specifying which type must be removed from the other, or that either type is considered waste. The clear implication is that in this case, it does not matter which type must be removed from the mixture. Support for this position may be drawn from the case of the lupines, where due to the unusual nature of this food, the Gemara quote above says that removing the edible portion from the inedible portion is equivalent to removing waste from food. This would seem to apply that food and waste are defined objectively rather than by whether a person subjectively wants one item. However, according to Tosfos, we would have expected that for one who wants the edible portion of the lupines, removing it would have been permitted. So we see Rambam argues with Tosfos. This is the Rambam Hilchos Shabbos. He has two types of food, muravin, and they're mixed together. Borer achad me'achad, you can choose one from the other. Umeniach, and leave the other alone. Lechol me'ad, if you want to see it right away. V'imbirer v'hiniach la'akrazma, but if he chose and left it for later, v'afilu libo biyom, like even on the same day, that's chayiv. So the caveat is after you eat it right away. You can't separate and leave it for later. And the Shulchan Aruch quotes the Rambam exactly. The Ramah adds a gloss, which changes the meaning to represent the position of Tosfos, requiring one to remove the food that is to be eaten. He chooses one's umeniach, and leaves it to eat it right away. However, umeniach, Ramah says asheni kedei lechol miyad. The second type is in order to eat it immediately. The Biur Halacha points out that the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch may not agree with the ruling of the Ramah. Irrespective of this, he concludes that the halacha is in accordance with the Ramah. Rambam is exactly the same language of the Rambam. Is that you can choose and place it for either himself or later to eat it. But v'harav moisif tevas hasheni kedei. The Ramah added the second in order to eat it right away. Meshina kavanas machaber v'Rambam l'dilano oto she'ena rotzei ata. The food that he doesn't want now is kipsolas. It's like waste. V'tzarich livror to she'rotz lechol davka. And you have to only remove the food from the mixture of the one that he wants to eat. It's not clear that the Ramah and the Rambam are saying the same thing. The Yesh Gdolim Shenim Sovim Ke. I am the Sefer Mamre Mordechai Shevi B'Shem Rav Rabbeinu David Aramah B'Perushal Aram Shekosov D'Vshnei Minim Oichlim, who wrote with two kinds of food. Afal Pishlo Ochal Mashabirer, even though he didn't eat what he chose. Ela Mashaya Bor Biyado Inichol. He left it. He saved one of them that he chose. He ate the other one right away. The law strain on zela bebor psolas gomor. We would only prohibit if he had removed a real paste, like watermelon seeds mitoch ochel. Aval masha ein kein hacha davishte mine ochlim. But here's two types of foods. V'kol shabor kedei le'echol al teshari. To choose to eat right away is permitted. Ad kan lashon Mamre Mordechai. Amnam la'isa ein lozus medivrei trumas hadeshen v'Ramah shemekoran hu medivrei harosh. Even some poskim will usually follow the rulings of Shulchan Aruch, quote the stringent position of the Ramah's halacha in this instance, include the Kaf HaChaim, Rav Adi Yosef. Shlomo Amar, who's still alive, you can see his biography. He was born 1948 in Casablanca. He became the chief rabbi. In 2003. And since 2013, he's been the Sephardic chief rabbi in Yerushalayim. Says Rav Shlomo Amar, Yesh la'ir b'divrei Kaf HaChaim, shekosov b'pshitus shamin she'ein rotze le'echol ata, who wrote that you have two foods. He chose one, and the food that he didn't want to eat now, chashuv psolos, is considered like waste. Va'asr lebararo, that you would violate borer. V'lo hiskir b'zeh cholik. He doesn't say anybody argues. They all hold that the Rambam doesn't hold like that. And the Rambam clearly said that the second food that wasn't chosen is not waste. He could choose the food that he didn't choose to eat it right away. As long as he eats one of them right away. Uviyotir yesh la'ir b'divrei Gaon Olo Moran Harishon L'Tzion b'Kosina Hilchos Borer Rav Ovadia Yosef b'Imbira Min Hasheni Shein Chofetz Bo If he eats the food that he did not choose, chayiv ad kan l'shon L'Fia Omer Das Rambam Moran Zal Latir Lavale Livsop B'Sichna Charif of the chayiv. He points out, even though Rav Ovadia Yosef said it's usher, but the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch permit it. So he says you should be it's stringent. He says you have to be stringent in that case. 309. Borer with one type of food. The Gemara only discusses the malach of borer regarding sorting food and waste, or sorting two types of food. Does borer apply as well when separating or removing some of the same type of food? The Tzurba Mrabanan infers from the Gemara that if one has a collection of items of the same type, removing some of them does not constitute borer, it is permitted. He also notes that sorting two types of fish would be borer, as we do not consider all fish to be one type of food. There are a number of pieces of fish on a board, or in a bowl, mufredet zu bezu, that are separated. That's how a balabusta will put out the food. He comes to eat it. How do you sort? How do you choose what you want to eat, and then leave over? How do you do this to not violate borer? Tshuva. He doesn't have to be so careful. He says, because this is the same, because borer is only when they have two types of food. All the other authors that talk about two different but two types of fish are not considered one type. That's the Tzurba Mrabanan. So the Ramah rules with the Tzurba Mrabanan and adds that sorting larger and smaller pieces of the same type of fish is permitted, as they are all considered the same food type. So, but if they're if you have salmon and tuna, so those are two different kinds of food. You can choose it with your hand as long as you eat it right away. Even though they're big pieces and you can identify them. But if it's all salmon, that's not brera. So you can choose whatever you want, a big piece, a smaller piece, then it's not a problem. The Taz disagrees with the entire leniency of the Tzurba Mrabanan, arguing that as food and waste are subjective and depend on what a person wants to eat, sorting is relevant. It means borer is operative, even when all the items are the same type. In fact, as items of one type are less distinguishable from each other, sorting them is even more significant than sorting different items. That's what the Taz says. Commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. He's surprised at the leniency. That it's clear that if you have two types, it's pshita sheshach breira. It's considered breira. Certainly, two different types of species where it's clear that it's different. Bein shaykh was a eruv. You're not going to mix these. I feel achilo you shouldn't choose. V'suda ba'oichla mu'ervim psoiles. When food is mixed with waste, hu b'min echad with, and that's certainly one type of food. Huadin im sham psoiles rak sherotzel nech tzas b'menu. Even if there was psoiles there, he just wants to leave a little bit. Mikra asar shir psoiles. What he leaves behind is considered waste. K'mach kazvatur. So therefore, the Taz concludes and says, "Lo yivra afilu b'min echad." Even with one type of food, v'afilu gedol, bigger piece, smaller piece, rak mushurot selachalata, just what he wants to eat now, or shikach stam in abab yadu laniach l'sud acheres lo b'derech breira. Something comes into his hand, he leaves it for another meal. He didn't have kavanah doing that when he sorted it. The Mishnah Berurah reports that many other achronim agree with the Ramah. He adds that meat cooked in different ways, and certainly meats of different species, like lamb versus beef, are considered different types for the purpose of Allah, and therefore Borer is relevant to them. The Taz was stringent even with one type of food. You just have to choose the one you want to eat right now. Something that happens to come into his hand, he leaves that for later. Lo derech breira. Harbe achronim chalku alav. Hiskimu Ramah shepasek ketrumas hadoshen. That it's not considered two different types of food, and it's not breira at all. V'dad de basar tzli muvushal. He says even like this: if you barbecue meat and you have cooked meat, those mikra shni minim, those two types of food. By the way, my wife, no, you put one plate with one kind of food, like lamb, and then you put, because then there's no breira, because you understand? If you had on one plate, one platter, lamb and beef ribs, but you don't do that. You have a plate, you have platters with different things, then there's less of this problem. The Mishnah Berurah is saying if you have different types of meat, you shouldn't put them on the same platter. Because but I guess if you're going to choose and eat it right away, you're not saving it, it's not really a problem. As long as you take that by hand or with a fork and eat it right away, which we do. We go to the table and eat it.
Yes, you have enough time, they said, remember?
No, but you don't serve multiple cuts of meat on one platter.
But I like to.
You like to, you've never done that.
Nice.
Why is that?
He's gonna do.
Okay. He says the basar tzlim ushal mikri shnei minim. The Indians have v'kol sheken basar shamine ofos mechulakim. Or you have like chicken and duck. That's what he says. Two different kinds of poultry are considered types. If you have a big meal and you have different pieces next to each other, see, that's the problem. To choose to eat it right away is not a borer. You choose something and leave it over until, let's say, later on that night, that would be a problem. Just eat it right away. The Orchos Shabbos gives us several examples of items which are considered to be of the same type, and those that are considered different types. You have big pieces of meat and smaller pieces of meat. They're all beef, or they're all chicken or lamb. Mutter liver elu me'elu. That's not a problem. I want a bigger piece, I want a smaller piece, I want this piece. It's not a breira. Even if you're not necessarily going to eat it right away, and you're going to use a fork, it's all considered one species, and they all have the same use. It's shame taruvis. It's not like there's a mixture. Omnam, what if their function is different? Kigon. Garbayim gdolos uktanos. You have big socks and little socks. Osichos rosh gdolos viktanos. You have hair clips, large ones and small ones. Harezu tarovis, it's a mixture. V'yesh b'zeh iser brera.
Right, like if you had a drawer of knee socks and ankle socks and boot socks.
That's a problem.
That's a big.
That's the problem with brera.
Most people separate before it gets.
Okay. Hayalafon of chelke of shonim uravin zebezeh. Multiple types of cuts of chicken. A pulka, a thigh, a breast. That's exactly what he says. Shukayim chazuk knafayim, or wings. Yesh matir levarin zemizeh, the chashuv min echad. It's all considered one type of food, and you can choose. Yesh sha'asru bezeh. There are those who prohibit. Aval of the kaved, liver and chicken, or chicken and basar nechshavim minim chalukim ve'neter levarim elefi klalei heter melechas bar. Unless you follow what we've learned, you got to use your hand or a fork, not a spoon. You have to eat it right away.
You're eating it right away.
Then kosvu aposkim sha'af b'taruvas shel min echad. Here you have one food. It's a mixture. Imumak b'tamid shlo le'echol echad mehem u'le'olam eina ochlo. He's always particular. He always chooses one type and not the other. For example, I never liked breast. I only like thighs. For me, he says that would be considered like two minim, and I'm choosing a thing that I would never eat, and that would follow boirer. You would need to use the correct methods of being boirer. That's a big chiddush.
It's between breast and and thigh chicken.
Dark and light.
Yeah, I don't like the breast is too dry,
I like.
and I don't eat that.
And thighs.
So what he says is, if a person has become over the years careful, even among pieces of chicken, to choose one or the other, for him it's considered two species, and you can't be bored. Kigon. He has thighs and he has wings. He never eats wings. Now I would eat those. Okay. Of tapuchim chamutzim. He has sour apples, umetukim, sweet apples. Muravin zebezeh. Nistapku apoiskim imuter livorim zebezeh. Like a green sour apple.
Hold on, Ernie.
Yes.
Ernie, do we paskin like that, or the chicken with the thigh and this? Okay, so I don't like that, but so I take it and I don't like the thigh, and so you know.
No. The first Lamed Gimel was matirin. Yesh matirin liboran zemizeh, because it's considered minechad. There was yesh sha'asru b'zeh. Okay, but then he said, let's say you as an individual over the last 20 years, if you were shown a thigh and a breast, you would never choose the breast. So for you, it's considered, it would be like two minim, and you'd have to use the permitted ways of doing borer, which is you have to eat it right away. You couldn't take it and then leave it for, let's say, the next meal, because that would be an Isser borer. But if it's the same species, according to the first shot where you'd eat everything, you eat thigh, you eat the breast, and you eat flegel, then there's no borer, no matter what you choose. That's how we've posted so far. Now, let's say you have in a bowl of fruit, sour apple and a red apple. Even though it's an apple, they're all min echad, or is it considered because you have a preference, shnei minim? How about this one? Matzos shleimois ushvurois. You have whole matzah, you have pieces of matzah, merava zubazu. The rotza liveros are shleimus l'tzorach lecha mishnah. For lecha mishnah, you want to use a sholem. I mean, I'm doing this all Pesach. Finding, you get this box of shmur matzah, and you got to go sort through there. You're looking for a sholem and not for the lecha mishnah. Is that a borer? Yesha kosvu shezebegeder taruvis. It's even though they're all matzah, but it's viewed as two like species. Vein live or elefi klolim lachos ber. V'yeshet to your bezeh. But there's some lenient. I mean, I would say, based on what we've learned so far, everyone would consider it one food. But maybe because of its halachic significance as a sholem, It creates the distinction. How about this? Beitza mevusheles. A boiled egg is nechshava kula kamin echad. Even though you have white and you have the yellow on the inside, it's not considered two foods. It's one food. Let's say you're a person who only likes to eat the white, like me. I like the yellow when it's cooked. I don't like the boiled yellow. So I will always choose the white. So he'll hold here that it's not considered borer. You can, that's not considered borer. Rav Nissim Karelis writes that different loaves of bread are only considered two types if there's a significant difference between them. If, for one example, one loaf is baked more fully than the others, they are nevertheless considered to be one type. But if one of them is stale, inferior, or inedible, that would be defined as psolas and be considered a mixture when placed together with others of the same product. So I have all the time on Shabbos 2 or 3 different challahs, but they're all edible. So they're all, one is sweet, one is water challah, one is an egg challah, so I'll have different ones. I end up cutting all of them. It's not like we choose one and leave the others. I guess that's not a problem. Near Debinin, there has to be a problem. So, for example, let's say your wife only came home with one fresh challah, and then there's an old stale piece of lechem something somewhere that you have to add to it. That would be a problem of borer. But the other case might be borer. Machshava. We have learned in this year about the halachos of borer, which deal with the permitted and forbidden methods of sorting and separating items from each other. We learned that one of the conditions necessary to permit borer on Shabbos is to take the ochel, the food, from the psolas, which is the waste or the food that one does not want. The Pnine Halacha, that Rav Eliezer Malamed writes, that the idea of borer also teaches us a very important lesson in Machshava. Efsher lilmod meribli amlochos oiskois ba'aforos hapsos ma'ochel. We are going to learn something from the massive amounts of malachos that are involved in these thing of separating food from waste. Ad kama pulos abir merachezes b'chayenu. It shows us how important differentiating between this and that is important in our lives. Ha'olam kulo mebubal umu'urav. The world is confused and mixed. The ability to separate the good from bad. The ability to separate between good and bad allows the human being to make the world a better place. Mlachos elu, so these mlachos that are prohibited on Shabbos, tells us about the spiritual work that a human being goes through. A qualitative basis. There's a lot of things going on. Choosing culturally as well. We have to separate good from bad. If things would separate out in the natural world, everything good on this side, everything bad on one side, it would be very easy to choose good. Evil is sometimes mixed in with good. And sometimes even within the bad is good. Something that is considered bad in one situation might be good in a different setting. Edgar Gadol, the great challenge that we have to keep on separating good from bad. Put everything in its place. And therefore, There will be tikkun olam. Yitaken bekach et haolam. Bimot hachol anu tzrichim lasot b'mlacha murkevet shel brirat hara me'atov. During the week, we're separating bad from the good. Hadoreshet hitaskut b'psolet uverash ba'olam. We have to sort of get involved in bad things in the world. Ulam b'Shabbat aleinu lihitmaked b'tzad hapnimi hatov shel hamitziut. We should focus on the inner goodness of existence and enjoy it, l'sanikbo. Ulihit-kasher liyisudota emunah, and connect to the foundations of emunah. Umikoch hakdusha v'emunah shanu koltim b'Shabbos. Through this holiness and emunah that we get on Shabbos, yeshlanu yicholet lavchin bimot hachol. This will give us the power during the week to separate ben hatov v'ra. Ulasok b'mlechat habirur and nidreshet l'tikun haolam. According to Rabbi Lamed, halachos of Borer remind us that many elements of life include a mixture of ochel and psolos. We must learn how to identify those elements of psolos and remove them from the ochel. On Shabbos, though, we should focus on identifying the good in the world and attempt to connect to it. May we all be successful in our quest to sort out the complexity of the world and discover all the good while removing the bad. And you have some summaries of Borer that you can review. Any comments, questions? Okay, God willing, we'll have volume 19 next week. And by the way, everyone can come pick up volume 22. There's no charge for volume 22 because they sent it to us gratis. Yeah, and thank you to Harold and Magda for sponsoring that. And what was that?
You may have to start. If you don't get-
And we may have to start 22 if we haven't gotten 19, but hopefully we'll get 19 so we can continue Borer. Okay, shkoyach everybody.
Shkoyach.
He has 9.
Eh,